Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, March 22nd. This is the Administrative Committee regular meeting. I'm Brandy Sullivan, and with me are Councilor Sandra Kelly and Gina Trucio. We also have our city supervisor and several members of the audience. And our first item this afternoon is approval of the March 8th Administrative Committee minutes.
I looked really hard to find something because I wanted to prove that I really read them, and they look good.
Okay, well,
They look good to me too.
all right, then it's confirmed. Taylor did a great job with the minutes. They look good to me as well. Next item on the agenda is the community events applications and permits update, and we have Amanda Argona presenting.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to pull up and remember to actually share the screen this time. All right, so before you in your packet is an action item regarding the community events process. And I just want to provide an overview and be happy to answer any questions afterwards. So as some of you are aware, the Community Events Division is fairly new, and one of the many responsibilities we have are permitting a plethora of community events that typically will take place in the public right-of-way. In 2019, which is a non-COVID year, so a more traditional year, we processed 45 applications, and they were permitted as well. So we receive a community event application, review it, several department heads review it, and if approved, they receive a community event permit. Types of events that we typically deal with are fun runs, bicycle-thons, marathons, marches, rallies, demos, block parties. It's also the same process that is used for several city events, so Art Walk, Moscow Farmers Market, also a city-affiliated event such as the Moscow Chamber of Commerce Downtown Trick or Treating, in which we're a partner with. So what happened last year? We sort of had a hold on our many events in April due to some gathering restrictions. July 1st, the legal department did update the release and hold harmless, and in your packets is the current community events application, so you can read that language, but it, let me just move this out of the way. There we go. It does include local and state orders and regulations. August 3rd, we received, per council direction, no processing of community event applications that take place in the public right-of-way. And then March 1st, our office received from the North Central Idaho Public Health District an attestation and large gathering plan for events and venues with greater than 50 individuals. As it stands right now in the stage that we're at, out of the Governor Little's office, 50 individuals or less can gather at this point in time. So we are starting to see 2021 event applications with people being vaccinated and that sort of thing. Our office has been contacted by a sorority. Kappa Alpha Theta typically holds what they call Slamma Jamma. They are looking to hold something similar but titled differently. When I spoke with the representative on the phone, this event would have less than 200 people was their estimate. Moscow Farmers Market scheduled for opening day, May 1st. And then Moscow Ren Fair, they are trying to move forward with planning and have looked at bringing Moscow Ren Fair just for this year due to COVID onto Main Street, north of the market, due to the current restrictions in place. And they really felt like they couldn't manage the event traditionally if it were in East City Park. So they were looking at a different format to help manage that flow of traffic. And then they have also submitted a separate application for a sidewalk parade leading up to East City Park after their event downtown. So this is just a snapshot. I imagine we might be getting more applications, especially for events that happen later in the fall. So I'm requesting today, and our office is requesting, we are seeking direction on the processing of community event applications, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have that were in your packet or maybe not addressed in the PowerPoint.
Questions for Amanda?
Amanda, one question I have, just because I know a lot of folks will be asking this. I know we get excited about having events and community things going on, but I can just picture a lot of folks reading the paper and saying, oh my gosh, there's going to be a sorority having some sort of event downtown with 200 people. I don't know that that's the smartest thing in the world. And Ren Fair wants to have a parade. That really scares me, even with all the vaccine stuff. So while I know we follow the Idaho guidelines, we follow the city mandates, and all those things are right, I still think there's going to be a lot of community nervousness about that. Are you working on messaging about these kinds of events?
Yeah, so we haven't really, as far as when it comes to individuals in the community, talked about that kind of messaging, but the updated hold harmless agreement that is currently in the events application does say that the sponsor acknowledges that she or he has read and understands the Idaho governor's most recent 2020 Stay Healthy Order and guidelines. It also goes on to talk about any local regulations, public health department. As a point of reference, the market has submitted a mass gathering plan to our public health department, and in your packet, you can see they want to know exactly what you're going to be doing to mitigate any public health concerns. So we had to submit that. The other thing that I think is kind of keeping us in limbo a little bit is that Governor Little could move us into a different stage that allows for more than 50 people to gather. So as far as messaging goes, I would love to take any direction from council regarding that, but it would obviously be the current public health order that the city has in place is one of the strongest points of messaging that we do have. But these applications are reviewed by Chief Fry, Chief Nickerson, engineering department, to make sure that because they typically take place in the public right-of-way, there's no construction happening, or God forbid something dangerous were to happen, they can respond quickly. So if there was specific messaging that council would like to see, we can certainly put that forward.
One thing I think of just hearing you talk about that would be just public messaging, almost in a way like a warning. This large event is happening in this public space. So if you don't want to be exposed to this event, giving people notice to plan around it if they need to do some, business downtown, but don't want to interact with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If I may. And as the governor changes our phase that we're in, as the council's metrics, all of those things that are going on, the message will have to be changed as that landscape changes as well. I think you'll see in the next presentation as well that Amanda's done a pretty good job of anticipating things and putting things in place to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably one of the most important things, and what's been problematic, is when people feel they didn't know, and then they see something and they don't know what it is, and they don't know that there was any oversight, or that it's something that's organized and there was a process to make it happen. So I think getting that out in advance.
Yep.
Right.
Anything else, Gina?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
No, I just think it goes with everything else that we're doing in terms of, I've been talking to a lot of folks in a lot of different varieties about, yep, we're excited that things look like they're hopeful and moving forward and everything's great, but there's still a lot of nervousness, and I just want to make sure we're always aware of that, and that we are just telling people, I like the idea of, hey, this is happening because you might not want to be downtown at this time because there's this X going on.
Yeah, and to go back to your point, Councilmember Kelly, the Public Health Department does require that attestation plan to be posted in a public spot.
Oh, that's true.
So
right.
that's something that, if we determined, hey, based off of your community event application, it looks like you're going to have more than 50 people, you're also going to need to submit this mass gathering plan to the Public Health Department and post this in an area, and really encourage whoever the sponsoring organization is to make sure that that information is getting out to the community so they're aware of what measures that they are taking, and if that has been approved as well.
Good.
If I may, Amanda, then is that going to be a requirement of the permit? So that they would, if it's going to be over 50, they need to independently approach the health district and get that information and implement those programs?
I would recommend that, especially because the public health department took it upon themselves forwarding that attestation, knowing that the farmers market does have more than 50 people typically gather. I think if that is something that is beholden to the farmers market, that is something that we would make applicable to all community event applications if they indicate that there's going to be more than 50 people.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And so you would then, the city would get that application and say, as part of this process, you need to fill out the attestation.
Yep, it would just be the same as if we were reviewing an application and it said, plan on having, amplified sound, then we would say, make sure you fill out this noise exemption permit from the police department. I want to have a beer garden. Make sure you fill out this barricade request from the streets department. So it'd be very similar in that process.
Great.
I have a question, though. Does that then put the city in a regulatory role? Like,
How do you mean, Gina, as far as?
posting the warning, basically, right? You were
We wouldn't
talking-
have to post it. The attestation plan, is that what you mean?
The note, we were talking about letting everyone know about the event and that sort of thing. Does any of what you're saying we're going to require them to do put us in any kind of a regulatory?
No more so than we are already.
Okay.
So you've
All right.
got to, you have to obey certain rules if you're in a park or certain rules in Friendship Square.
Okay.
It'd be the same thing. We're just implementing, requiring people to abide by and follow the state's plan. So a part of that is you need to post that warning. It's just they
Yeah.
need to get it done.
And so with that, will you require that they give you that signed copy of their attestation, so you know that they actually did it and it was signed off?
Yep.
And they're really, as far as I understand it from other things, no one is really following to see, are they actually doing all the things that they checked off in the boxes? No one from the health department or from the city?
The public
or-
health department would not be coming to do any sort of check-in, but it's just that they submitted a plan, they said they would do these things, it's signed off by the public health department. But to my knowledge, and I believe it might even say at the top of that document, that they won't be necessarily doing inspections of these events.
and there's no implication that would then fall to the city?
No, not to my knowledge.
So why are they required to do any of that then?
Well, I think in your packets, it says should submit, so there is not strong language there. So I would say for us, if we make it a requirement, then we're saying you have to do this thing. If someone not within the city limits wants to hold an event, and whether or not they're aware of this document, then maybe that's part of the issue as far as putting that language of should in there. But that is a great question.
Yeah.
I know, especially because there's no requirement in that document, like you must select X number. I mean, it almost seems to me like partially it's an educational thing, like these are things to please think about.
Yeah.
But it's,
But when you have another event, though, I mean, and maybe this is a little off, but when I filled out these forms, you have to get the sidewalk permit, and you have to make sure that you've talked and get something signed off by Chief Fry that says, yes, you will have someone there where you cross the street.
Yep.
And you have to sign off to get the sound and volume for the stage at East City Park. And so I don't see how this is different than that. And yes, there have been times with the different events I've been planning where I've seen police there because they've been great about making sure there's no harassment, right? But they very easily could come by and say, hey, Sandra, I'd really like to see that permit for your sound because that's really loud and people are complaining, right? And if I don't have that, I would expect to get fined or the thing shut down also. So, I mean, those are things that as an event planner or someone in charge responsible for that event that you go through. And so even though there may not be a presence there, there could be a presence there. Or someone could call and be like, wow, there are 500 people downtown that I never see. Are they part of this event and what did they do? And you can send someone down if you have to be like, excuse me, Ms. Turner, who's in charge of this event, can I see your attestation report? So to me, those are the same, and I would feel much better having that in place.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the only thing that really there could be action on is if someone is violating the city's, at least at this moment, the city's distancing order that's in place, or a state thing. Other than that, people might not like it, but
Right.
Regardless of what they checked off on there, they don't have to take people's temperature, and they don't have to be
Right.
sanitizing everything, even if they submitted that to the health
So-
department, that they would.
So, I mean, I guess, for instance, I know that, and I'm sure they probably do at the University of Idaho also, but at WSU, if you go on campus, you have to open up a form, go through the list of all the COVID symptoms, and mark off that you've attested before you can go in on campus, right? And you're supposed to show that too. I mean, if you have to go somewhere, I've never been asked for it, but I'm always prepped to be like, yep, here it is on my phone. I attested this morning, here's a little green dot, right? And so it's just always there. And if I don't do it, I mean, I'll be written up, and you get so many of those, and you get fined or you
Yeah.
get docked. So to me, it's that same sort of thing. It may not be right there at the gate, but the possibility of it happening is there, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
You mean just requiring that they have that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would agree. I think that
Okay, so, just so staff is clear, so Amanda's recommendations moving forward as the landscape changes, committee's fine with doing that. We'll come to council on the first meeting in April and take the temperature, so to speak, of the entire council. But as we're moving forward, both with farmers market and these community events, people want to get going again, so Amanda just wants to make sure that we've got the procedures in place so that we can
Yeah.
do that as safely as possible.
And I would also just add, April is like when we're really up and running with all these different permits. We've got, cycling competitions that require street closures, a turtle derby on the U of I campus. I mean, so the amount, we're not seeing the volume that we typically see around this time of year. So people are still like hesitant, they're still weighing those concerns, but we are just starting to see those requests again. So it's just really important that we have the current directive from council to say yes, move forward, or no, or have this in place, just because I do think, especially in the fall, we will start to see an uptick as
Yep.
well.
Yeah.
So yes,
okay? Well,
I would
then,
say yes, keep moving forward the direction you're going in, and get ready for events, because they're going to happen with the cautionary things that we talked about just in mind.
and I think Rick, we were all feeling requiring that they do, if it's more than 50 people, that they fill out the attestation, have that signed, and provide that to you the same way
Yes. Yeah.
you were required to for the farmer's market.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All
Great.
right. Gary, are you good? Okay.
Yep. Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Next item on the agenda, Amanda gets to stay with us, is the 2021 Moscow Farmers Market Operations Proposal.
Oh, stop doing that.
I guess while you're finding that, maybe the last thing, just to recap, is maybe having a specific plan for how you're going to get the word out, possibly?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
In advance of events. Sorry to rewind for a second.
All right, so staying in the line of events and things that are up and coming, the Moscow Farmers Market, as we are all aware and excited for, is scheduled to start on May 1st. And so one thing that we just wanted to do was put forward the proposals that we're looking at for this year compared to last year. And I did just want to recap. On March 13th, there was the local emergency proclamation that limited the gatherings of 50 people or more, which had gone through, extended to May 5th, which was the first market. It had been postponed for opening day. March 25th, farmers markets were deemed essential by the governor's office, which we kind of took the view of an outdoor grocery store environment. We kind of delayed the start of opening day to really make sure that we had put a lot of consideration and thought into how market was going to look versus a typical lively festival weekly environment that people have known to come and love. And so on May 16th, we offered our first motor in market, direct response to COVID, to make sure that the growers had an outlet to get their items out. And then June 6th, we opened up downtown, heavily modified market, learned a lot. And it was a gradual reopening throughout the entire month of June regarding vendor types and the number of people that could be coming in at any given time. So that was 2020. We also did not offer market entertainment. We had no youth programming. No city commissions were tabling. U of I Cals opted to do some to-go kits offered through Motor Inn rather than having a presence downtown. And we did not have any youth vendors or performance vendors at that time either. We really just streamlined things sort of to minimize that linger longer atmosphere that we all know. So this year, staff is recommending a return of several things, a continuance of some items, and then still trying to figure out a few other things. So what we would like to see happen is on May 1st, all vendors who are interested in coming back, regardless of their vendor category or type, are returning. Allow for youth vendors to return, and we are starting to see an increase in those requests. Allow for outreach with the city commissions and the U of I College of Ag and Life Sciences booth. We do plan on continuing to offer the Motor Inn Moscow Farmers Market, which will be moving downtown. We'll continue the suspension of performance vendors, also known as our buskers. They do tend to sort of draw mini crowds around them, and that space is difficult to maintain. We are looking at adjusting any sort of youth program that we might be offering to more to-go kits, again, to minimize that hands-on, close interaction. And then lastly, allow for the return of market entertainment in a very modified capacity, which was included in your packets. As far as implications for these recommendations, should there be a return of entertainment, we would not see a reduction in vendor fees. Entertainment has a very big sway on the ability for vendors to make sales and the atmosphere of the market. If there were no return of the entertainment amenity, we would suggest the waiver of vendor registration fees only for this year. If you recall, last year, we kept registration fees in place, but reduced the actual day fee by half for all of our vendors, and then waived all of the additional surcharges. So, questions regarding that plan? I know that that particular item had a lot of attachments in your packet, so.
If I may. Again, this is exactly the same thing as we just got done with. It's a way to establish what the market is going to be doing this year with the appropriate hygiene measures, having entertainment to get back to some sense of normalcy with a buffer zone around the entertainment so that, again, you're not putting people at risk. But as the landscape changes, then Amanda could go from having the one entertainment time to the second one as well, if the circumstances warrant it. So, in my review of the plan, it appears that it's all set up for success and allows us to do some pivots if you need to, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Gary said. In that specific market entertainment contingency document that was in your packet, just like how we monitor weather events where maybe there's a high smoke event and we would cancel entertainment for that day, same thing. If cases were to increase, if something were to be established, we would pull back accordingly.
What do you think of the overall senses with those choices of the modified music and the vendor fees versus, I guess maybe I'm asking from a vendor perspective, saying, all right, we're another year without it, and they don't pay those fees?
Yeah, so I will say that vendor fees, I did the math right before I came down. they were pretty impacted as far as what we had anticipated in bringing in revenue, but we were also able to sort of balance our budget to account for that. The entertainment that I'm looking at bringing it back specifically is the paid time slot. So last year when we canceled all entertainment, we saved money, right? Because we paid those 10:30 to 12:30 bands. So as much as I think I've talked with a few vendors, I think they've realized that fees may not be reduced this year. And I haven't had anyone sort of clamoring down my door to say, I really can't attend because I've been hit so hard. And vendors are still able to opt out if they want, if they're needing to. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I'm just still, it's hard, I know, for all of us to envision. I'm not sure that the sort of the cost benefit of having modified music, that is the goal, to bring more people down there and then there's more shopping, or is it just kind of an overall, it feels like an optimistic gradual return to normalcy? Is it going to be counterproductive in that it does bring more people and then they're gathering in a way that makes people uncomfortable going there, and then it has the negative, the opposite effect of what was intended? And
Yeah. The feedback we got from vendors last year is even just like having a canned music, like an iPod playing, would be super beneficial. To me, that's no live market entertainment, which means that recommendation of the reduced registration or the waiver of registration fees would kick in. But I think the vendors understand the risk that they're coming into, and they're also trying to make a livelihood. I think the other thing too, we could still see trepidation of people visiting the area. It is a sort of tourist generation aspect. So even pending on what's going on in our community with potential live WSU or U of I graduations, people are going to be in the area. Whether or not they stick around longer, we will still have the at-risk shopping hour. We'll still have the curbside pickup. So I think if there are people who are nervous about being around other people, there are options available for them. But I think vendors are ready to, they want to come back and thrive at the market, and they want that venue to be that place where they thrive. So I think that's, as far as offering that music time slot, the paid one in particular, 10:30 to 12:30, that's generally when we see more people come to the market anyways. Even like last year when we had all of our restrictions, we wouldn't be offering any additional seating. So again, it's really just providing that sort of more atmosphere. So there wouldn't be that linger longer aspect and like, I'm going to sit down and watch this band. There are park benches in Friendship Square, but we wouldn't put out that additional seating that we normally do for the bands. So
I really happen to believe strongly that the entertainment is the most expendable part of the market. And having just been to Boise this weekend and seeing what non-socially distant, non-mask wearing crowds looks like, it's very uncomfortable. And so I feel like your plan that I read through is well thought out. I agree with you, Mr. Riedner, but I do think that in that equation, if we need to reduce risk further, get an iPod and pipe some music through, and just again, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel here. If we need to take these steps, let's just do them one more time, and then maybe by next year we'll be at a point where we can have everything as it used to be. But there's just too much risk with singing, and it's a traffic jam right there anyway. It's kind of a narrowed area and people are constantly going back and forth through there. I really worry about entertainment in general.
so that would be that option one, that is just the canned
Yep.
music. I know when I looked into just some of the details too, I think it just gets very tricky with the part, the singers would have to be more than 6 feet apart and not facing each other, or they have to wear a mask, but does that mean if they're, the way it's written, if they're 8 feet apart, they still can't face each other? And it just gets to be like, okay, maybe the decision is, do we do this yet or not? But I think it's very challenging to figure out which little things make everyone comfortable with it, because,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
So, what do you think, Sandra?
I think both.
Yeah,
No, I mean, because I've heard from so many people really excited about the entertainment, right?
Right.
And I get asked that a lot, especially, amazingly enough, well, at least to me, on the different commission meetings I've been to, whether they were the ones that I'm assigned to or that I've covered for people, the question always is, oh, and is the entertainment going to be there, or is this just going to be another year like it was last year? And I'm like, they're working on it. I don't know the plan yet, right? But they're very hopeful for that entertainment value. So I get that, and I'm also, I mean, that was the part I missed most, because I think everyone here knows I hate vegetables, right? Love the market, love all the vendors, but man, I don't want to eat a radish ever, right? So I love the other parts of the market, right? And yet, I think that is a part that when we are trying to promote a safe flow and smart shopping and safe shopping for all, I mean, that's a part I am squishy about, to be honest. I feel that one thing I think is great that almost all the council is here today, so we can hear this for the first time and ponder it over again when you come before us for a decision. Because I think, absolutely agree with all the stuff that you've put in here. I love that you're doing Motor Inn again, because I do know so many people that are not ready to put themselves out there, but they love their vegetables, and I love them for that, because they eat mine, right? So I love that we're doing that. I just want to make sure we're also watching out for those that want to go back, and this might be one thing that keeps them. So right now, I mean, I think my recommendation is keep going forward where you're at, but I'm also very interested to see where we're going to end up next week when we see this at council, because after, I mean, reading this over Saturday and reading it over again today before I got here, I kept going back and forth. I'm sure I'll go back and forth some more. So I would say keep doing what you're doing, but let's see where we all end up as a full council next week.
Great.
Perfect.
okay, so, I guess, is there any specific recommendation, or?
No, just bring it forward for discussion.
I have one question. I mean, is there any possibility, I know everything has to be, a lot of these things have to be planned well in advance. Could you come up with a proposal or a possibility of your option B for consideration, but starting, say, in July?
Oh, absolutely. That is, I think those things, that kind of cushion is on the table for sure. And I think that was, something as I put together this proposal, we say we're going to prioritize smaller acts. Well, that's pending smaller acts sign up to want to play the market. And many of the bands that typically want this time slot are larger acts. So I think those were things that internally I was looking at to see. But I understand that with things still being so early, not everyone necessarily being the vaccine pool being opened up to everyone that necessarily wants it. I think those could be options on the table, and I'd be happy to put together a proposal.
I think that's a good idea. I like that a lot.
Great, okay,
We'll see you Monday then, or 2 Mondays from now.
all right. Thanks, Amanda.
Well
And-
done, Amanda. Well done.
And that'll
Right.
be on the regular agenda as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
All that's left is staff report.
We have no further staff report.
All right. Anyone else
I
need
think
to
we
say
should adjourn.
anything? All right. We're adjourned.
Thank you.